I'm sitting in my living room right now, staring at a half-packed suitcase on the floor. The zipper's open, clothes spilling out like they're trying to escape this house before I do. The TV's on, but the volume is low, background noise for the thoughts I can't seem to quiet. It's been 3 days since that dinner. 3 days since my entire life shifted in the span of a few hours. I've barely eaten. My phone buzzes, but I don't check it. I already know it's him. I keep replaying that night over and over in my mind, like some cruel movie I can't walk out of. I remember the excitement bubbling in my chest, the way I checked my hair twice in the hallway mirror before we left. I was so sure that night was going to be a turning point, a moment when my family would finally see what I saw in Ethan. I thought love could survive anything, even my family's disapproval. I was wrong. Ethan and I had been together almost a year. It wasn't a perfect relationship, what is, but it was real. He made me laugh, he held me when the nightmares from my divorce crept in, and he promised me a fresh start. My family had a way of being cautious, maybe even controlling, but I was convinced they'd come around once they saw the man who had been patient with me when no one else was. I'd been keeping our relationship mostly private, partly to protect it from their opinions, partly because I wanted to unveil it on my terms. That night was supposed to be my moment. My big reveal. I would take him to Sunday dinner at my parents' house, the same table where every major decision in my life had been discussed, debated, and dissected. And I'd tell them, with pride in my voice, that Ethan was moving in with me. I thought it would be a happy surprise. I thought it would show them how serious we were, how ready we were for the next step. But I was wrong, so painfully wrong. I didn't know it then, as I stood in my kitchen buttoning my favorite navy dress, that I was walking straight into the kind of night that rips the ground out from under you. I didn't know that the man I loved was carrying secrets so heavy, they'd crush not just us, but my relationships with people I've known my whole life. That night was supposed to be the start of our life together. Instead, it became the night I learned I didn't know him at all. Ethan and I had been together just shy of a year. In that time, I'd grown to think of him as my safe harbor after years of stormy seas. My divorce had been ugly, 2 years of custody battles over my daughter, Emily, who had just turned 14. My family had made it clear they didn't approve of my last relationship. They thought he was selfish, reckless, and bad for Emily. And if I'm being honest, they were right. Ethan was different. He was steady, charming in a quiet way, and he treated Emily with a gentle patience that melted me. He didn't just bring me flowers, he fixed leaky faucets and remembered how I liked my coffee. He was the kind of man I thought my parents might finally approve of, if they could just meet him without their usual wall of judgment. That's why I decided Sunday dinner would be the perfect opportunity. We'd go to my parents' house, the same place where every major holiday, fight, and reconciliation in my life had unfolded, and I'd introduce Ethan not just as my boyfriend, but as my future. I planned to announce that he'd be moving in with Emily and me next month. The catch? I hadn't exactly discussed the timing with Ethan yet. He'd mentioned wanting to live together, someday, and I figured sometimes love just needed a little push. But in the days leading up to the dinner, I noticed little things. One night while I was talking about my mom's famous pot roast and how my dad always carved it, Ethan's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, smiled faintly, and flipped it face down on the table. Who was that? I'd asked, half teasing. Work stuff, he said quickly, changing the subject. Another time, I mentioned how my brother would probably grill him about football, something I knew Ethan loved, and he shifted in his seat. I don't know if I'm in the mood for a big interrogation, he murmured. I laughed it off. Nerves, I thought. Meeting the family can be intimidating. By Sunday afternoon, I was buzzing with excitement. Emily had agreed to come, though she warned me she'd be quiet, because she didn't feel like talking to a bunch of adults. I slipped on my navy dress, the one Ethan always said made my eyes look brighter, and when he picked me up, I leaned over and kissed his cheek. You ready? I asked. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. Yeah. Let's do this. I didn't know it then, but that half-hearted smile was the first crack in the glass, one I wouldn't see until the whole thing shattered later that night. The moment Ethan and I stepped through my parents' front door, I felt the air change. My mom greeted us first, her lips curved into what might have been a smile, but her eyes stayed cool. My dad shook Ethan's hand politely, but it was brief, like touching something you weren't sure you wanted to hold. We walked into the dining room, where my siblings were already seated. My brother gave Ethan a once-over, then nodded without saying much. My sister, Jenna, smiled thinly before looking down at her phone. Ethan tried, I'll give him that. He complimented my mom's cooking, asked my dad about his fishing trips, and even laughed at my brother's bad puns. But there were moments, fleeting, almost invisible, where I caught certain glances exchanged between family members. My sister's eyes darting to my brother after Ethan spoke. My dad watching Ethan like he was trying to read between the lines of his words. I told myself it was just the usual family frost. They'd warm up eventually. Dinner was fine. Not great, but not the interrogation I'd feared. By the time dessert rolled around, my mom's famous pecan pie, I felt a wave of relief. This was it, I thought. The perfect moment to share my news. I waited until everyone had a fork in hand before I spoke, my voice bright and proud. So, I have an announcement, I said, glancing at Ethan with a smile. Ethan will be moving in with me starting next month. For a heartbeat, the room went completely still. My mom's fork clinked against her plate. My brother's eyes shifted toward the tablecloth. Ethan froze, mid-bite, his fork suspended in the air. It was Jenna who broke the silence. She set her fork down and stared at me. You mean you're letting him move in with you and Emily, after what he did? I blinked, my smile faltering. After what who did? What are you talking about? Her eyes cut to Ethan, sharp and accusing. You didn't tell her. My dad let out a low sigh, rubbing his temples. Claire, you should have asked around before bringing him here. My pulse started to race. Someone tell me what's going on right now. Ethan shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his eyes fixed on the table. It's not what they think, he muttered. What is? I pressed, my voice rising. He didn't answer. My mom just pushed her plate away, her lips pressed into a thin line, like she was holding back a storm. I had no idea, sitting there with my untouched pie, that this was just the first crack, and the rest of the truth would be so much worse. The moment we stepped outside, the cool night air felt like a slap. I didn't even wait until we got to the car. Explain, I said, my voice low but sharp. Ethan rubbed the back of his neck, glancing toward the house as if hoping someone would interrupt. It's complicated. No, I snapped. It's actually really simple. My sister just implied you did something bad enough to keep you away from my daughter. My dad basically told me I should have investigated you before bringing you here. So either you tell me the truth right now, or we're done. He exhaled heavily, avoiding my eyes. Years ago, I dated your cousin. Jessica. The name hit me like a stone to the chest. Jessica and I weren't close, but she was still family. Okay, and? It ended badly, he said quickly. She accused me of cheating, manipulating her, all kinds of stuff. None of it was true, Claire. She was bitter, and she wanted to make me look bad. I stared at him, trying to read the sincerity in his face. I wanted to believe him, God, I wanted to believe him, but something about the way he'd hidden it all this time twisted in my gut like a knife. Why didn't you tell me? Because I knew you'd react like this, he said. I didn't want to give your family more ammunition. My phone buzzed in my purse. I pulled it out to find 3 unread messages, one from my brother, one from my aunt, one from my mom. All warnings. All variations of don't let him near Emily. I slipped the phone back into my bag, my fingers trembling. The drive home was silent. Ethan stared out the passenger window. I gripped the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping me steady. When we got back, he went straight to the shower without another word. I sat on the couch, my mind replaying every detail of dinner, every uneasy glance my family had exchanged. Something in me needed more than his word. Maybe it was wrong, but I picked up his phone from the coffee table. No passcode. My hands moved before my conscience could catch up. And there it was, thread after thread of flirty messages. Not with Jessica, but with someone saved simply as J. The most recent one read, "Can't wait to see you again." My stomach turned. This wasn't just about the past anymore. This was happening now. I sat there staring at the screen, my pulse roaring in my ears. The name, J, wasn't just a letter anymore. The photos in the chat history made it sickeningly clear. A familiar smile. A familiar laugh caught mid-selfie. Jasmine. One of my closest friends. The woman I'd cried to over coffee when my divorce papers were signed. The one who told me I deserved a man like Ethan after she met him at a neighborhood barbecue. The messages stretched back months. Flirty inside jokes. Photos of her in dresses I'd helped her pick out for dates. And sprinkled throughout were Ethan's replies, not just casual flirting, but full-blown confessions about how much he'd missed her touch and couldn't wait for the next hotel night. Some of the timestamps matched perfectly with nights he told me he was working late or helping a buddy move. My hands shook as I heard the shower shut off. I could have sat there in stunned silence, but something inside me, maybe the last piece of my pride, snapped. When he came into the living room in just a towel, I held up his phone. "Care to explain why Jasmine is sending you heart emojis at midnight?" His eyes flicked to the screen and then back to me, expression flat. "Claire, it's not what it looks like." I laughed, sharp and humorless. "Oh. Because it looks like you've been sleeping with my friend for months." He dropped onto the armchair across from me, running a hand through his damp hair. "We were just having fun. It didn't mean anything." "Fun?" My voice cracked, half fury, half disbelief. "You lied to me. You lied to my daughter. You sat at my parents' dinner table tonight while I told everyone you were moving in, and you've been screwing my friend." His jaw tightened. "You're blowing this out of proportion. I care about you, Claire. I just made a mistake." A mistake. That's what he called it. And then it hit me, the strange looks at dinner, my sister's cryptic comment, my dad's warning. This wasn't just about Jessica. Some of them already knew. Jasmine had been to my parents' house before. She'd been at birthdays, barbecues, little get-togethers. Of course people had noticed. I felt a rush of humiliation so strong it made my chest ache. I had stood there, smiling like an idiot, defending a man who had been betraying me all along, and half the room had known it. In that moment, I didn't just lose Ethan. I lost trust in my own judgment. And that, somehow, hurt worse. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I didn't even cry, not right away. I just told him to get dressed, grab his things, and leave. He tried to argue, but I'd already gone cold inside. The kind of cold where you stop pleading for someone to choose you. The kind of cold where you finally realize they never really did. By the next morning, he was gone. No grand apology. No last-minute change of heart. Just a short text saying, "I hope someday you forgive me." Jasmine never reached out. Not once. The woman who once called me her soul sister vanished from my life like she'd never existed. I heard she moved a few towns over, started dating someone new. I didn't care enough to confirm it. The fallout with my family wasn't instant forgiveness either. There were awkward dinners, months where I barely spoke to my sister, and long stretches of silence with my dad. But slowly, we began to mend. They admitted they'd suspected something, even heard rumors, but hadn't wanted to hurt me unless they were sure. At first, I was furious they hadn't told me. But in time, I understood, they weren't trying to control me. They were trying to protect me. I just hadn't wanted to hear it. The truth was, I'd rushed love. I wanted so badly to prove to myself, and maybe to them, that I could make it work this time. That I wasn't broken from my divorce. That I could still be wanted. And because of that, I ignored the voice in my head that whispered something was off. I mistook warning signs for nerves, distance for independence, lies for misunderstandings. I defended Ethan not because I believed in him, but because I needed him to be who I wanted him to be. And that need, it cost me. If I had listened, to my gut, to my family, to the people who actually loved me, maybe I could have avoided the humiliation, the heartbreak, and the nights lying awake wondering how I'd missed it all. But life doesn't rewind, it just teaches. Now, when I look back, I don't see the man I loved. I see the lesson he left behind. And maybe, just maybe, that's worth more than keeping him ever would have been. Because sometimes, the people who love you aren't trying to control you. They're trying to protect you. I just wish I had listened before I lost so much. So I'll ask you, and be honest with yourself, have you ever defended someone so hard, only to find out everyone else was right?